Hey everyone, TGIF. It is Chats with Chels again. So we are here with the lovely Samantha today.
Hey guys.
And we're going to be chatting about all kinds of exciting stuff. So you did a little poll on your Instagram, and the fans said that they wanted to hear about
influencer marketing
and starting your own business. So that's what we're going to chat about. So thank you for, prepping that for us.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start off today. My friend Nadia brought some kombucha. So usually we have beer, but today this is not beer. And
I'm a big kombucha fan.
Last time it exploded all over, so this is a good thing that it didn't today.
I was just down in California and they had kombucha on tap. Like they had kombucha bars.
Oh, I think I saw that on your Instagram story, and I was like, I totally want to try that. This one is strawberry lemonade, so
okay.
Super excited.
You totally gave me more.
Well, that's your like guest bonus.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. So, oh my God, Nadia, if you're watching this is so good.
Good job, Nadia.
So I'm super excited to have you today.
I'm excited.
So the first thing that I guess we'll chat about is how you got your start in the marketing and the role that you're in now. So you are like an independent consultant right now working with sports agencies and influencers. So how did you get started in that?
So I had worked with the St. John's Ice Caps, which was the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, over the last 4 years. And I predominantly worked in sponsorships, digital media, and ticket sales. And so one of the things that I was tasked with when I first came on with the Ice Caps was we were at full capacity for traditional inventory. And so it was, how do we increase our revenues through a digital means? And so that really became my niche. And over time, after 4 years, it just kind of became second nature of like understanding how that works. But what I realized when I'd go out to sponsorship conferences or anything like that was there's a lot of people who just didn't grasp valuation of digital media assets at all. And so there was a lot of sports teams that were asking questions of like, how do you go about valuation, and how do you go about understanding like not just making this an add-on of your package of like, we're going to give you hospitality and then rink boards and nice logos, and then just give you digital media like assets on the side. And I'm there being like, no, those are worth like, $20,000 in value that you're giving them. So it was kind of educating both my peers on that, and then our team on like, and our sponsors on understanding the value of digital media. And then over the last 4 years, there really were a lot more sponsors who really wanted that exposure in digital. It wasn't just an add-on. It was like they wanted a conversion from it, or they wanted the exposure from it, or they wanted brand affinity to come from it. So whatever it was, that became part of their objectives. And yet still within that space, you saw a lot of people, a lot of sports teams that were even at the professional level who were still following these more antiquated ways of like throwing in the digital media assets, because it didn't like, they didn't understand how to value it. It wasn't like grandfathered in the rate card. So that's where my expertise in the place came from. Then from there, I started to realize that influencers had almost the exact same problem of having no clue what their digital assets were worth. And so like the main thing for me was seeing influencers who like had 15, 20,000 followers, and they'd take a free trip like down to like Bahamas somewhere. And for the travel agency, it would cost them maybe like, I don't know, $1,000 for flights to get them down there, and then just like empty inventory of a hotel room for the week. And they get all this exposure from that influencer. And in reality, the exposure they give them for a week would probably be worth at least $10,000. Yep. And yet that influencer would be taking it for free, because they'd be like, oh, free trip, this is cool, like cool experiences. I get to like show off to other people that I'm doing cool stuff. And so I personally found issue with that the exact same way I did with sports teams. And so I started as like a hobby when I was still working in sports, in trying to ingrain myself in what was going on in the influencer space. And I found there were a lot of influencers who, like, when I'd start just chatting with them, they'd be like, oh, and maybe I charge like $500 for a post. And then I'd be looking at their audience, looking at the metrics, looking at their engagement rates, and being like, no, you can charge at least $2,000, right? Which makes a big difference in an influencer's, like, just in general, how much they're investing. And of course, brands are never going to tell them that, like, you're undervaluing yourselves. If they say like $500 for this Instagram post, like, brands are going to be like, okay, all right, we'll move forward, right? Like they're not actually gonna, like fess up that you're completely undervaluing yourself, and they'll want to continue to work with you, which is great, but you're gonna have to work 4 times as hard to try to get what you're worth. And so for me, when I finished working with the ice caps, I kind of fell into all of it backwards. I mean, I was at a point in time where I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with my like specific knowledge set. And I remember looking at my husband at the time and just saying like, I think that I'm just gonna like take it easy for the next couple of months and see if I can just like help these people on the side. And then, we'll get married, because we were getting married that September. We'll get married, I'll plan the wedding, and then I'll start looking for a job or figure out what I want to do. And somehow that turned into like a very chaotic summer full of a lot of great connections and a lot of serendipitous things that happened for me of being able to like find new clients in the sports space that wanted to work with me, and then as well as find influencers, and finding the right influencers that just through word of mouth, when you start working with them, everyone else that follows them kind of wants to work with you as well. So I fell into it.
So I think that's like such a common story from like the people that I've been talking to. There's like just so many entrepreneurs by chance.
Yeah.
So you kind of almost find like yourself, not necessarily in a hobby, but you just have this like unique skill set, and then all of a sudden it just kind of clicks. So there's like, oh, people actually like really want this skill set, and I could like move out to like doing it, I guess, on my own. So that's like one thing that I've found.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. When I graduated university, I had started my own business, and it was in an incubator setting, and it was very much like I am going to technically start my own business properly, right? So it was like, how do you set yourself up to have human capital that's proper, of like you have somebody in this area for tech and this somebody for marketing and this one for sales. And then it's like, okay, so how do you now create like something that you're going to have a proof of concept for your product? And then how do you like scale that? And then how do you take the advice from your mentors? And then how do you position this business to be good for seed capital? And what, like I was doing everything mechanically correct to start a business, except for I never ended up being successful in like making the business go, because we just got so lost in the vision of like trying to start a business, and like we didn't really have a purpose. We were just, our purpose was to start a business without having that value piece. And so this one was just, it was so different for me, because it was like July when I remember like looking around, I'm like in New York having this crazy feeling of imposter syndrome of like, what the hell am I doing here? And there's this really something I've created for myself, and like, calling people being like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I need to get out of here. Like, this is not, I'm a fraud. And then, you come to that realization that like, no, I think this is me having my own business. Like, I think this is like the trajectory that somehow I've been on, and it's working for me right now.
I'm here, I got this.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a thing that I've seen a lot too, is just like, I just wrote a blog on it, but it's like entrepreneur syndrome is what I call it. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you think that you are not, I guess, worthy or like standing up to like the other entrepreneurs, because I find, there's so many like this idea of everything has to be like flashy technology, like you have to have a startup, and you have to be on this.
You have to use the word pivot.
Yeah,
and pivoting.
Pivot, or like, but yeah. And then once you are like around those people, you're like, oh, like, am I really like an entrepreneur? Like, I don't know. Like, they're like on this like multi-million-dollar capital raising journey, and I'm just like here with my small business, like working away. So that's like totally a feeling I can relate to.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed just from being here in Newfoundland, like a lot of people I think being an entrepreneur in Newfoundland is not a new thing. Like, you've had these mom and pop shops, like especially when you go anywhere around the Bay, of like that's your livelihood. You just like create this business for yourself. But like when I went away to Toronto a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, there's no startup culture in Newfoundland. There's no like entrepreneurial culture. And then over the years, as I've changed my mind about like what that actually looks like, I'm like, yeah, we just don't call ourselves entrepreneurs, right? We've been doing this forever. Like anybody whose father's been a fisherman, and like they're literally, what they do every day is like dependent on the income for their household, and that's it. Like, or having convenience stores down the road in outport communities, or having the local bar, or like whatever. I mean, that's just, there's so much entrepreneurial history in our province that we just don't position as like the New York, Toronto, Vancouver version of like what an entrepreneur is.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess for you, you know, we chatted about how you got your start. So like if I were just starting out, you know, I'm finishing university and I'm like, hey, I think that I want to start a business. So what are your like top tips and advice that you would give to someone in that realm?
If they wanted to start just any business in general?
Any business or like freelancing, just like going out on their own, not taking that traditional like graduate university, get a job, house, kids.
Yeah.
So what would be like your top advice for when you're starting?
I think the biggest thing that I realized is like stick with what people ask you questions about a lot. Right? So like I get a lot of questions just in general about Insta stories. Like it just seems to be something that a lot of people are like, how do you? And I'm like, I don't know. I actually just see the world in Insta stories. Like I don't know how to create a story. Like I just kind of do it. But like that's something a lot of people have been, I'm like, okay, that doesn't come natural to people to like curate this feed about Insta stories. Same thing with social media. Even when I was trying to start my own business in Toronto, I knew a crap ton about social media. I had my own travel blog. I'd known a lot. I had all this inventory, and yet I almost did nothing with that business in the social media realm because I was so focused on starting a business, and like I just did nothing with social. And then once I got like into a position where I could get some experience with the ice caps, it was like working within sponsorship, but people around me seeing that as like, no, you light up when you talk about social media. Tell us a little bit more about like what we could do on social media. And I just found that there were people who I saw as having so much more experience than me and so much more intelligent or had more credentials than me who were asking me about social media. And so like I took those hints as like, what do they see you as an expert in? You know, I don't identify myself as an expert or a guru because I think that the space is changing too much, but what do they come to you constantly and ask questions about? And that's how you identify a place where you can add value and likely charge people something for it.
And it's funny, I heard this quote the other day and it was like, your duh is someone else's light bulb moment. So, and I think that that's something too, it's huge that the digital marketing aspect, especially I find in like you said, like smaller, more rural businesses, has just been so undervalued. People just don't appreciate like how much social media can affect their business. Like if you guys look at like Kilbride Pizza, have you seen that?
No.
So there's this group on Facebook and it has like 10,000 people in it from Newfoundland who are just like chatting about pizza. And then all of a sudden this new pizza shop in Kilbride was like overrun with people, and it was like they couldn't even like answer the phone to take orders.
Cool. I mean, that's all. I mean, I joined a group that talks about pizza, so like that makes sense to me. But it really is like, I mean, social media in general is about creating that community, right? Like if you're somebody who approaches social media, especially like pizza shops, if you're somebody who approaches any of that from a perspective of like, I want to like tell them about my pizza specials, and I want to tell them like every pizza shop can tell you about pizza specials. I don't care about pizzas. I want somebody to like put a poll out there of who likes pineapple on a pizza.
No one,
right?
No one. It's
right? I love pineapple on a pizza.
But I had this argument with Mark Pottle too. It's just like that's like a debate that gets people interacting, right?
Exactly. That's what you need to be doing from a perspective like when you're looking at like what you do in your business. That's what you need to be like tuning in on specifically. Is like, what's the stuff that like isn't the sales? I mean, every pizza shop can do sales. Like, what are the authentic conversations that are happening about your industry?
And it's funny too, just like on like I guess the power of influencer marketing and like that realm of social media. I went to an event at ETC Gift Studio downtown this week, and I like picked up this pair of earrings. They were like from a local craftsperson. They were beautiful, and I put them on my Instagram story, and I wound up buying them too. But I had like 2 people message me being like, where is that? Like, hint to my friend that like I want them. So I think that is something that is really valuable to businesses, and that's something that you work in quite frequently. So whenever someone is ready to kind of, I guess, become an influencer, how would they get started?
I think it's so funny because the people that I know who are like, I want to be an influencer, they almost never can be an influencer, right? You know, like there's from my perspective, being an influencer is like you just find people come to you in the same sort of realm as like what questions do I ask? Like you hold influence in something. So like we were talking before, there's different realms. So like I would still consider somebody who's super dramatic, who you can't help but check out their like Facebook on a daily basis to like see what dramatic things they're getting up to, as an influencer. You know, like we all have those friends, but like they're an influencer in that you're like what they say you're going to read. You know, brands would kill for like them to like have some sort of dramatic story that ends up positively of like this brand, and like you're reading it and then like they hold that influence. I think there's people within the humor realm, there's people within the style realm, like right? So like I think it's, if you're somebody who is constantly being asked about your certain style choices or your hair or your makeup or whatever, like sometimes those are like key ways to identify where you can hold influence. Again, like for me, it's been in the social space. I wouldn't consider myself an influencer, but then there's other times that like, you know, if I push somebody to go watch something or do something, and then I see that like 50 people have gone and done it, and I'm like, oh, well, I hold some influence, right? There's influencers that'll come to me that'll want to work with me, and they'll have like, you know, 5,000, 10,000 followers. And typically, you know, I work with a lot of influencers that have more than that, but like I'll look at their engagement, I'll look at like the feeling I get when I watch their content, and just know, okay, well, they've got something, but the distribution of their content hasn't necessarily, you know, climaxed to where it should be, but I can see something in them. Like I know that they're going to be taking off. So it's just about getting all the mechanics of like how they're approaching things figured out. There's other times that people are just trying so hard to be an influencer on certain stuff, and it's just, you just know that it's not authentically them. Like they're trying really hard to be that startup entrepreneur that you follow. They're trying really hard to be this fitness guru that you follow. They're trying really hard. Like it just has to come from a really, I'm using authentic too much, but it's just got to be a really grounded place that you just like know in your heart of hearts. You could do this every day, whether or not you had 10,000 people following you or whether you had 2. And then at the same time, there's influencers who have like 10,000 followers, but they can drive more traffic or more conversions for a brand than somebody with 200,000 followers. And like, to me, those are more powerful people to work with, because as their audience grows, hopefully the power that they have to be able to do that is better. So that's another thing that's so interesting in valuing influencers and the influencer space is like, you know, brands look at it as, oh, you only have 10,000 followers. So like, you know, how I'm actually valuing this is not the same as this other influencer who had 10,000 followers. But, you know, that's where you point out as somebody who's a manager, an agent, or anybody of these influencers that like, check out their engagement rate, check out the conversions that we got. And like, yes, you aren't comparing like apples to apples here.
And I think like one of the huge things too is like I have seen like some Instagram accounts and they'll have like, you know, 5,000, 10,000 followers, but then you'll like look at what they post and it's like, oh, they have like 60 likes, and I'm like, I have like 500-ish, 600 followers, but I'm like, I post something and I'm like, I also get 60 likes. So I'm like, you know, where does that where does that engagement rate come from? And for me, I find like one of the things is like I'm always commenting on other people's posts, or like when people comment on mine, I'm like answering them, like asking them questions. And I think that's like something that's so important, is like always just engaging with the people who are interested in you, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah, the community management of it all is just like, how can you expect people are going to constantly want to comment on your post or like your post when you never acknowledge them? Right? The more that you show them, especially like I think it's really important even as you grow to continue to do that, because as you grow, there's more of that celebrity factor where people freak out if you respond to them, and like that's what's really important, because then you respond to them and they're like posting a screenshot of, oh my god, they wrote back, and like their influence comes into the case of like bringing more people in to follow your channels. So I guess as someone who is a little bit of Instagram whiz, her feed is beautiful. It's at Modern Day Marco on Instagram. What are some of the ways that you suggest to people to grow their following?
I mean, I think it's you stay within your lane, right? Like, I mean, I didn't want to be, personally, when I approached how to grow my Instagram, I didn't want to be somebody who was doing what a lot of people within my demographic and gender and age range were doing. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I posted a lot of outdoors photos, which was problematic at first because a lot of people, when they saw my feed, just thought I was just like this outdoor like hiking person. And then they watch Insta stories and they get a very different story of who I am. But I also then got into the stage of like curating what my captions are to show that beyond just being somebody, like I'm using the photo as a device to capture people's attention and then the caption to pull them in on who I am as a person. I think personally for anybody else looking to like build your following through Instagram, you've really got to find like what's your space, like what do you want to evoke in people when they land on your page, and then really stay true to that. You can't be all over the place. You can't be trying to be a style icon and trying to be somebody who's a health nut and then somebody who's trying to be really real in your sweatpants, and like it's just very, very difficult unless you can do all that stuff if you're really good at photography, right? Because if you can like create a good aesthetic that all the colors look like they match, but you're all over the place, that works. But typically a lot of people are only good with like working with white spaces and like working with flat lays and things like that. So I would just sort of, I'd say find your lane and like stay in that a little bit, and then let things like Insta stories allow other parts of your personalities to shine, but like have a common theme.
Yeah, I just recently started moving into Insta stories like a little bit more because I was always like kind of like a photographic person. So I'm always like taking like content photos, but I've always been like a little bit nervous on video until I started like doing this. I kind of had to get used to it. Death by fire? No. Yeah. I can't remember it right now. But I was always like really nervous. But then I started into like doing these and like getting more practice, and now I've like moved into like actually having my face on my Instagram story. So I guess with the upcoming changes to Facebook, and you kind of have to be in that video sphere. Yeah. So for people who maybe aren't as comfortable, what would you suggest? On video? I mean, Insta stories is the best way. I still don't think I'm comfortable on video, but like put me on Insta stories, like, and I'll chat with anybody. I'm not always comfortable like in a live environment to do lives with people, but again, Insta stories, you get really, even if you're editing Insta stories, they replay it and you can hear your voice over and over, and you're so annoyed with it as you're like editing things on the screen. That's just like you get used to seeing yourself in that environment. So like exactly the same. I mean, it was hard without Insta stories. Snapchat was always the same sort of thing. Like utilize Snapchat to like push all of that. It's really like in informal ways that you can put yourself on video that you know is going to disappear. It's not forever. And if you want to delete it, you can delete it. And then from there you get comfortable and you can start things like doing something a little bit more permanent on your feed or on Facebook or on YouTube or like wherever. Exactly. I just saw a thing, I started doing it when I was first getting used to doing video, but doing like Facebook Live, but setting it to private so that only you are watching it and only you can see it. So that's one of the things that Crystal Hobbs just mentioned it the other day too, and it kind of like gets you used to the setup and the technological part of it without the freak out. Yeah, you can always delete it or you can publish it. Yeah. So I guess for the final part of our podcast today is this new thing that we have, and it is called the Jar of Awesome. So some people have submitted questions to me via Instagram and Facebook just for my guests, and some of them are, my own questions. So we'll let you pick out a couple, so you can just pick out kind of one at a time. You can give it a shake or not a shake, whatever you want to do. You got this filled to the brim. Yeah, I know. I kind of need a bigger jar, I think. I'm really, curious, so I'm always adding new things in as I think of them. Cool. As someone who makes your own schedule, how do you keep yourself focused and limit distractions? I don't do this well. I think it's really funny. I realized the other day, if I'm doing anything on my phone, I'm easily distracted. If I'm doing any of the exact same stuff, email, on Facebook, analyzing anything, if I'm on my desktop, I don't get distracted. So that's my I don't know. My husband's the opposite. He's and we had that discussion. I don't know why that just works for me of on my desktop I feel as though I'm in more of a mode to go through tasks, whereas on my phone I'm
finish an email, then I'm like, oh, I need to check something on Instagram for a client, and then I end up like in the scroll for like
the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I'm there for like half an hour, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I should get back to this. But then I see something about a different client, and then I'm like, oh, I have to email that client about this, and like, it's just on my phone is just a really hard place to be. On desktop, that's like, you know, and try to set a routine for yourself too. I mean, I allow myself different times of the day to have absolutely no screen time. And then other parts of the day, I allow myself to like get into the scroll. So.
Okay, so we'll just pick out. We usually do 3. So.
Okay. What does your morning routine look like? Gosh, these are like, you know, like I'd love to be like, my morning routine is I wake up at 5 a.m. and I don't look at my phone at all, and I do yoga.
Oh, really? And then you have a green smoothie?
And then I have toast and avocado.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Toast and avocado.
Well, you're never going to be able to afford a house now.
Yeah, with some good... that actually is my ideal, but I just never do that.
Yeah.
I think typically my morning routine is like waking up slowly. This is one thing like that I've prioritized for myself a lot lately, is like my self-care routine is sleep. So my non-negotiable is being able to just like sleep in and allow myself that, especially if I have a night where I'm working late to like try to meet a deadline for something. It's just really hard for me to get to a place where I can wake up again at 7 a.m. and then keep going. So as long as I have like 8 hours sleep, I am a better human. So my morning routine fluctuates because of that, because that's where I am. My sleep is top priority. I wake up, and then just sort of like from working from home, one of the main things I've learned is like you get up, you shower, you get dressed, and you get yourself in the mindset of like moving. I think it was really easy to begin with to be like, I'm working from home, I'm gonna like wear pajamas, and you know, I can like keep my hair in a bun and like look like a state all day, and that actually keeps you in a mindset of being like pretty drowsy the rest of the day. So
Brandon said, be honest, Sam.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's not what I don't do the toast and avocado every day, although I eat a lot of avocados. So.
I do. It's like a top vegetable.
Yeah.
Is it a fruit? Is it a fruit? I think it's fruit. Okay. That's another debate for another time.
Okay, one more.
One more.
What is your favorite word? Oh, I like galvanized.
Ooh.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're doing good things. I like galvanized that, whatever, you know, like you instilled some sort of significant change.
I think of like galvanized steel.
Yeah, you know, there's that too.
It's like super shiny.
That might be like the biochem like background of you just like coming into play a little bit more, but I like galvanized.
I think that sounds super shiny and bright.
Yeah.
So I like that one too. I'll have to add that one to my vocabulary.
Or effervescent. That one's really nice too.
I like that one. I haven't heard that one that frequently.
Yeah, effervescent. It's just like, oh, she's effervescent. Like, don't we all want to be effervescent?
I'm gonna add that to like I have like a bullet journal with like my 2018 goals. So I'm gonna add that to like like goal number 9. Be effervescent. So thank you for tuning in, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be on YouTube later today, as well as on the iTunes store under Chats with Chels. So click subscribe if you want to hear more of these videos with some Newfoundland and Labrador under 40 awesome people.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.